understandable. This talk hasn't really got a beginning because I've left out everything I've ever had in any previous talk. So it's hard to start. All I can say is I'm starting where I stopped off at ARTNET last time I spoke, which at least gives the people who were there last time some kind of slight kind of lead into it. The only way I can describe what I do is to describe what I do. I'm just going to go through various things, schemes I've done since I left the AA, since I last talked to ARTNET. And the big change this time is that anybody who saw my other talk will know that its heart-rending poignancy was based on the fact that I would describe schemes as lovingly and carefully, and then I would, as beautifully as possible, express the way in which they weren't put up. And this was the basis of the whole thing, and there's a sort of gradual increase in the amount of laughter, and it sort of built up, and it was very nice to give because it was absolutely hysterical and very sad. You know, I mean, like, it was terrific. It was very easy to give because it was everyone. It was the same format. It's like a joke you've heard again and again. It worked well. This time I've built them all. It's a good deal funnier actually, but I've decided I'm going to join. I don't join clubs, but I've decided to join one club. It's a skiing club called the Downhill Only Club. This is the way that buildings strike me. You've got it in your head, and then it's just downhill from there on. I mean, you're just fighting with it. The bloody thing's just rolling off down the hill, and you're just trying to hold on to as much as you can at the top. It's absolutely hysterical. It's terrible, you know. Anyway, I've had some clients. Actually, no, don't turn the lights off. Don't turn the lights off because you have to see both at once. I'm sorry. I've got some clients. You know, I'm really quite lucky. I've had some clients. Now, the thing about a client, it's a difficult one to know who is the client. Now, it's quite obvious the guy who comes to you is the client, but it never is him. It's always his mother, his father, his auntie, or perhaps a house he had before is the client. Very odd. Anyway, I got a client in Lincolnshire, and his father. I mean, you know, it's not politically, you know, I'm a washout. His father gave him this house here with all these little windows in. It's in Lincolnshire, really lovely, pretty part of Lincolnshire. His father's got the manor house. No, his father's got the hall and he's got the manor. Right. This is the manor. It's from there to there. And his father owned it and gave it to him. He didn't really like it very much. This was the thing. He came and he said, Piers, I don't really like that house very much. I wonder if we could do an addition, which we could have the bits that I want to live in. So we have a 2-story farmhouse in Lincolnshire, which on the plan is here. And I suggested to him that he built a small chateau extension on 3 floors next to it here with 2 round ends. The plan is quite simple. It's just a double-ended, it's 2 circles joined together, banged onto the end of the house. On the ground floor is the kitchen and the nursery. On the next floor, his bedroom and bathroom, and a child's room. And on the floor above, a games room right over the whole of the top floor. I wanted to do 3 floors, so I told him he wanted a games room. Actually, he agreed. He said he wanted a games room, so it was all right. But I really thought that I needed the 3rd floor, which is very high-handed and cost him, I suppose, about 15,000 quid. Now, this is a section. You see, the section's not too difficult. And it's although I did a bit of sort of architectural work here with the dropped kitchen and the raised lavatory. The lavatory's under the stairs. I suppose I should take you through it. Kitchen's in the middle. The nursery's up at this end. They got French windows all round. The east is here, so you get the sun coming in there, and the south is down here in a very conventional place, sort of one end of the building coming in through the windows. His bedroom is halved with his bathroom, which is awfully architectural, sort of bath behind the bed head here. The bed head's here, the bath's here, the bed sticks out here, and there's a whole lot of French windows and a balcony that sticks out. Quite simple cantilevering joists. The joists just stick through the building, come out, look like Brighton Pier on the outside. And then the top floor, you go up a staircase up the middle of the building, across here from the existing building, and up through the middle of the bar, which is the main part of the games room is the bar. And you come up here and there's a big room at the top. I'll show you some photographs of it now. It was built. Now, this is where we really come to building. Now, there's a whole business with building, of obligations, and I've never known anything like trying to get two lots of windows looking the same. I mean, it just killed me. You know, we had a whole lot out, then a whole lot in, and then the builder got the wrong ones. Now, one of the interesting, I'm not being very coherent. One of the interesting about builders is that you've got to kind of oblige them to do what you want, because there's no going back at all. You may think that you can, if the guy builds it wrong, you can make him build it again, but you can't. You can't. I mean, when did any of you, I mean, really, tell a builder to take something down and put it up again? It doesn't happen. So you've got to kind of suggest to him that it does it right. And the only way to suggest to him that it does it right is it seems the most natural, straightforward way to do it. This is what I've found. The odd thing is that you do all that, and then he doesn't build it right. And it's trying to understand what his natural way of building it wrong, or his natural inclination, that's the most difficult. There is an incredible enforced suburbia into builders. And the same as clients, it's just like clients. They haven't seen anything good, so they don't expect it. And builders the same. They haven't seen a good detail, they don't expect them. Now, that's not really sort of by the by, except I'm just trying to explain why all these windows are different. They're all standard magnet joinery, you know. I mean, it's awful. I mean, you could do one you could do a special window just as cheap, but no, you have to do standard magnet joinery because nobody will believe it. He won't believe it anymore. He's done standard magnet joinery. The fact that standard magnet joinery pushed their prices through the roof is neither here nor there. Standard magnet joinery is the cheap way, and so on and so forth. Right. Well. Oh, this wall. That's something to do with the client. When I wasn't there, it's in Lincolnshire. It's in Lincolnshire. You know, it's hard when things are in Lincolnshire. You know, they add things on. This is the other side. Now, the nicest thing about this was it got town planning. I never saw a town planner. I sent the drawings in, and they sent me back the pass exactly 1 month after I sent it, and not one question, and not one holdback. I think that's not bad, adding a 3-story building to a 2-story one. Middle of the country. This is the East End, which is a greenhouse, or a conservatory, which we added afterwards. In fact, that's the only thing the client really funked was the second floor, which was supposed to come out just like this one, only smaller, with its own little roof. And that guest bedroom was supposed to look into the top of the greenhouse, which would have been rather nice. Here's some interiors, which perhaps you can't see because of the light being on, and maybe we could just have it off for a second. Is that possible to have them off for a second? Time delay. Actually, perhaps I shouldn't really show. Oh God, yes, you can see them. The Hygiena QA. Well, look. People know about. They haven't got the first idea how to put up buildings, but once they get it down to a certain level, they know everything. They know all about Hygiena QA. Now, look, I tried to explain country kitchens and the joys of country kitchens, but these people have been living in country kitchens for all their life, and they wanted Hygiena QA, so they got Hygiena QA. Centrally planned. Actually, the Hygiena QA is completely thrown by this wonderful hood I had made by a West Indian up in the Angel, and he hasn't got any idea really of symmetry. And so all these are completely unevenly cut around the thing, and it's all welded up, and there's a tacked-on corner, which is on every corner, which, I must say, rather undoes the Hygiena QA. This is the nursery, and the light in the nursery. This is the bath behind the bed. I haven't got a wide enough angled camera. You see, I'm a bit of a snapper, really. I can't really get those art pictures. But this is the bath in olive, of course, because that's another thing people know how to choose in these days, the olive bath. And there's going to be some planting in the bedhead. This is they have two... I told you it's politically unreliable. This is the cupboards. The cupboards down the side. The scheme is like cream and grey, pale grey. In fact, it's a slightly greeny grey. And a kind of cream carpet, a kind of pallid scheme. This is looking through the glass. You can see the double glazing. I tried to dissuade them, but people will insist on all these things. Here's a bit of Brighton. Now, I'm quite pleased with the detailing of this. What you do is you put the joist out, leave gaps between the cracks, and then you put in little, slightly chamfered bits of wood between to run the water off before it gets to hit the joist and wears it away, Otherwise the joist comes into neat section pieces and falls. This is the bar. This is That's the bar in the games room. I'm sorry, I thought I had another one of that. That's the bar in the games room. Just see the billiards about to happen down there. And very strange, I suddenly found this sort of mystic Indian. I suddenly thought maybe I got him up completely the wrong way, but then I looked back at the light and realised that it was all going to be okay. So I got that up, and we can have the lights on again now. And he had a cousin. It's, you know, I mean, old school tie. He had a cousin who had a house in the Greenbelt, and the thing about the Greenbelt is you can't just build anything because they're very sensitive, much more sensitive than in Lincolnshire. So you're not allowed to just build anything. So he got an architect to design an extension over the garage, and then he asked me if I could like sort it out. You know, now we've had the architect. Perhaps you could have you in to sort of do something with it, perhaps, possibly. He had a garage, which is the thing in the Greenbelt. First you build the house, then you put the garage, then you put something over the garage, convert the garage to a dining room, put another garage. Take that garage, build over that garage, put stuff in that garage, convert the garage, put another garage. That's the modus. This is the modus here. This is why my scheme looks slightly like a garage. It was a garage. It would make a very nice garage, actually, for a nice Maserati. If they decide to retract and take the top off, take the garage back, put the car in the dining room, move back in, as they get poorer, after they've done this scheme. This is the drawing of... I just had to show you this. This is actually the drawing. It's quite a bit delicate for reproduction, so it didn't come out too well in the catalogue, so I insist on showing you that it's quite nicely drawn drawing. And I did that in the ground floor. People have asked me what it is. It's a dining room. Here's his sort of mock Chippendale down the middle. It's very nice, actually. It looks spectacular. I feel a bit naughty. Do you want to turn it off again? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Perhaps there's a sort of half a man. I'm just going to show you those again then. This is the dining room. They got a table. They had the table already. They had the chairs. They've gradually upholstering them in dark blue. It doesn't come out in the blown-up photograph, but the cuts are dark blue, and the curtains are also dark blue. I tried to do a sort of art shot, you know what I mean? Got the furniture out, thought I'd do an art shot, thought I'd better show a bit of red in there, since I intend to do all red lamps in the place. I thought I'd just try out an art shot. It looked just a bit too much, even for ARTNET, so I shelved it. Here's some other photographs proving that I took it. That's the hatch through to the kitchen, so the food comes out. That's on the other side of the room, which is a pyramid just for displaying china. It was originally designed to be a small gardener's lavatory, in fact, coming through from the back wall of the garage. Now, this was done as... They did just guess that perhaps the sound of the lavatory being pulled would not amuse their guests. It was dropped very fast. I only suggested it in somewhat oblique way because I was actually rather frightened of their response, which might be, shall we have Piers to do the rest of our house or not, and so on. So I was a bit... This is a special hats off to the sequence boys. It's the only thing I allowed myself to go inside these things. They're otherwise totally pointless, but there is one drawer that comes out to keep the napkins and the cutlery in on the pyramid that you serve the dinner off. Some very smart people might have thought that I was floating one above the other. It's not true. The truth is that the people who supplied the tiles didn't supply the right cove for that joint, and I'm still trying to get it out of them 3 years later. In fact, H.R. Johnson stopped producing the tile that they were doing it onto, so now they have to make the tile, and so on, so on, so on, and terribly British. Right. Meanwhile, upstairs, and perhaps you had a moment to glance at the plans where I mucked about with a square plan and put in a whole lot of groovy shaped rooms. It's a bit naughty to think that if you put in a funny shaped room it's going to be funny, but this is the guest wing and this is the radiator on the wall of the guest wing. It works really quite well. I didn't calculate it. This is the guest bedroom. Again, it's me and my snap happy camera. I was rather drunk after eating in the dining room and couldn't get very good pictures. But this would be the guest bedroom were you to ever be invited to stay there. When you lie on the bed, you look up and see the pattern. This is the guest bathroom, which has 2 mirrors in it, one either side. As you can see, the mirrors are in the shape of a parrot. The parrot's got a light in its beak. Also, the parrot opens and reveals all the things to clean your teeth with, and that absolute ubiquitous and revolting thing that everybody has in their bathroom is the revolting shaver point. Ugh. Anyway, it's in there. You don't see that till you open the parrot. I suppose it's rather a nasty thing to do to a parrot, put a shaver point inside it. They chose the bath furniture, of course, and the colour of the taps and sinks. It's one of the things that clients choose. This is another bathroom in the same house, not for the guests, for the children and so on, splashing children, and it's it's a sort of special, perhaps underground piece. That more or less settles that house, and again, I'm afraid it's lights on time again. It's rather boring. That's that floor. That's the guest bedroom, the guest bathroom, the bath looking straight out the corner window. I insist the architect put these corner windows in. It's the only thing I could think that he might understand, is putting in these. He put in nice aluminium sliding frames, but I've gotten to put in corner window. And then I'm doing their top floor, but I can't show you photographs. That's not finished yet. But it again has a billiards room, the Invictus billiards room, like cousin. A passage which you arrive into and is decorated in a kind of style. I don't know really, it's got lattice work and is lit through louver doors. There are louver doors down the passage, but there's no light in the passage. The lights are behind the louver doors, so that the only light you get appears to be coming from sort of interesting cabins off it. The guy's got a study where he collects stamps at this end, and he plays billiards and has the ubiquitous bar at that end. This is done with sort of boarding, but the boarding's lapped, and it's only done as a skirting and a sort of cornice where the roof ceiling meets the wall, and where the sloping part of the ceiling meets the flat part of the ceiling. And you can see the plan there, and this sort of section there, and the end wall there. And it's got those sort of curtains that go like this and come up on chains. Look a bit naughty for some reason. Right. I managed to get these 2 done before I joined a partnership. Now, I think that's absolutely amazing. I actually got them built. It was like it was downhill only, but also it was extraordinary because I discovered I haven't really got the right characteristics to be an architect. I can't really deal with builders. I'm too public school altogether. They just look at me. And I went on to a job. I literally went on to a job. We went round the job, and the builder turned to the client. He said, "He's funny, isn't he?" That's right in front of me, for Christ's sake. So I just got completely out of it. Cheated. I didn't cheat because I loved the cheat. The cheat was to become part of a partnership where I don't meet the builders. Builders and me. I seem to meet more builders now than I ever did, but that's the idea, is that you kind of share it out. The good guy meeting the builder meets the builder, and the good guy doing the design, and so on. It's a cheat. It's a lovely cheat. And the nicest part of the cheat is I can show you drawings that I didn't do, and I can say, we did this. As long as your name's on the end of it, you do all right. Our partnership is called Campbell's, Zagolovich, Wilkinson and Gough. The 2 Jews, Wilkinson and Gough. These 2 up front, they're great. It's very good to get into partnership with people with an interest in design and so on, and we've done so. It's lovely. We've taken offices in 240 High Holborn, which is like the most untrendy area we could think of. It's commercial. That's the idea. Commercial. I can now be the sick artist, the man who tears his hair out and says, "I can't do it." And there's somebody there to hear it. It's great. Yeah. Somebody there to cut my payoff. So I thought I'd show you first a building which I didn't do. And also, it's our first new building, complete new building, that any of us have ever done. And also, it's perhaps the only building that nobody believed that is a complete new building that, from the start, it is somewhat of a question, which is the converted part, or which is the addition. The whole thing is built from scratch in Bridport in Dorset. This is Bridport in Dorset. It's the end of the Chesil Beach. A few mood shots showing the indigenous vernacular. Mind you, I can't say Rex had ever been there when he designed it. What? Oh, what? Lights off, lights off, lights off then. We've seen the plan. You want to see the... No, we'll see the plan in a minute. We should have seen the plan. Oh, God, we've got straight into the photographs. Look. Oh, put it in the wrong way around. I put it in the wrong way round. I'm sorry. Now, one of the funny things about building a new building is how this was the most downhill building any of us have ever built. The guy knew the builder. He was his friend. Also, the builder was, I think, a member of the Rotary Club. The guy wanted to join the Rotary Club. The builder built whatever he liked. Now, the guy loved the drawings, but also, the guy wasn't really the client. The client was the whole of Bridport. This cafe's in the middle of Bridport, and the guy has a lot of friends. Everybody who goes in that cafe. He asked everybody what they thought of the drawings. Everybody had a different opinion. He was in great doubts about what to do. We had a time getting it up. We still have a time, really, to get it up right. It's almost impossible to begin to explain how it differs from the original design. It differs considerably. The shape's sort of there. I mean, you can kind of recognize it when you come around the corner in the car, but I must say I have my doubts. It's nice, though. It's nice to have a new building up. The way they paint cafe on and put their sign up, it does lead one to believe. This is the owner, and here are two of my partners enjoying the delights. The interior is terrific. The first thing they built was the bar, which we didn't design. They had a bricklayer on site who was a great brickie, and they were a bit disappointed that we hadn't realised it, and they designed this fantastic bar built of bricks. And that was the first thing we went. We went down the site, they got the site laid out, this fantastic bar, terrific, great brick bar, nothing else up. They were going, we can't quite understand the drawings for the rest of it. They got this bar, though, if you'd like to do that. This is more partners, and Jerry, who actually did all the drawings and did all the work. Now, we have the lights on again. I'll just show you that plan. It's really nice and traditional. I know how you love to see plans. Here's the building. It's sort of solid, and then there's a kind of wrap-round bit, which is the glass bit. It's intended to have another external balcony to it as well. And this is, the structure of it is just a building with a kind of lean-to invented immediately on the front there. The cafe seats people right round there, and it's slightly raised in here. There's a kitchen, and it's a post office, because it's part of the post office. There's stores and larders, and it's quite a straightforward building, and is being built, as you can see. Right, next one. What? Where's the bar? Oh, the bar is here. Well, when I say the bar is here, actually it's not there at all, because they didn't build it where we drew it. Or rather it is, it's more like there, but in fact, by the time that they had the drawings, the bar was there. This is one of the drawings of Jerry redrew it about 70 times to accommodate the people of Bridport. To the people of Bridport, 70 versions. This is sort of from the Middle Age, and is shown perhaps because of our intended lettering on it, which was very sort of straightforward. But people can always think of a more straightforward way, which is to take a piece of hardboard, paint cafe in as style writing and stuff, whack it up. Leave out leave out that bit. Oh, we don't need this bit. Let's try and do without, and so on. Anyway, it's almost too boring to go into the builder there. And I must be a little quick. Right. I had another client. I didn't know who the client was. I thought it was the client, and then it turned out to be the client's wife. I started to design it, and then she told me that her brother was an architect in Denmark. Blimey. So I had to go right over to leather thong chairs and so on smooth lines. It was tough. It really was tough. She was also pregnant. So she was in no hurry to get it built. She'd say yes to anything. It was a conversion in Narrow Street. Narrow Street, I'm sorry, I don't want the lights out. It just has a great view. It's those posh places where they pay thousands of quid to get this view of this sort of sewage arrangement that goes through London. It's great. The nice thing is that there's just nobody next to you, I suppose, on one side. They got 3 floors of this, and the house opened out very slightly and was distorted. The walls are all distorted, weren't rectangular, and I was trying to think of ways of enjoying that, the fact that the walls weren't rectangular, and that she wanted a larder. That's my son. I love larders, so I was very pleased to give her one. But it meant that the kitchen could kind of distort even more than the building. Everybody wants built-in kitchens. I try and dissuade them, I promise you, but I still give in and design them in the end, of course. The kitchen was here. This is a drawing of the kitchen. Kitchen opens out slightly, just enough to really annoy the builders. Carpenters, each drawer is very slightly twisted from the next one. I tried, I really didn't do it too much on purpose. You know, it just worked out that way, that everything had, and then it looks a bit odd because you get 2 rectangular sinks, and then you're playing. You don't play around with them actually, because the builder puts them in where he thinks they should go, which is sort of in a straight, somehow in with a straight line. But anyway, I angled it in a bit, and I realised that this thing was going to be very claustrophobic as it came to a kind of point. So I decided to make it even more claustrophobic by leaning the whole lot in like this. And of course each former, because of the angle, has to be very slightly different when you lean them in. I really sometimes don't understand why I'm not lynched when I go on site, actually. It's not a question of just... this is a shot of it. Yes, you will have to turn the lights off now for this. Right. That's a couple of shots of it. You can see they lean in, it goes in. It's all in terribly false perspective. And there at the end, it's a George Miller. This is a Mark I reserve facade, or whatever it's called. It's very dusty. There's some bits that went very wrong, actually, but perhaps we won't go into it. No, I don't think we will. We'll pretend it's a success if I get things done right. Meanwhile, upstairs, I tried to interpret... We'll have to have the lights on again. I'm sorry about this. I tried to interpret the way that the room was cut back in a different way. In the funny shape of the room, by taking a rectangle from the front wall, or was it that wall, and taking that as the setting out angle, and then just setting it back continuously. I just thought, if you have sliding doors for cupboards, and oh God, don't those Danes like cupboards. If you're having sliding doors for cupboards, you could slide one behind the other, but you could keep sliding the next one behind the other one, and come bring them out. So you get a stagger. You know, it's kind of 30s without trying, you know what I mean? Well, here it is again, going the other way, and you do get into some problems, of course, none of which I really resolved. I just drew it. The bath staggers back, which is intriguing, and there's a bath square on, and there's a roof light square on above that. Now, have you ever tried to get a roof light square on in a crooked building above a bath, which hasn't yet been set out, because the guys who put the roof light in are before the guys who set out the woodwork, so you've got a bit of a number going there. I don't know really how you get your way. Anyway, there's the baby's room. Bed's off down here somewhere, as per this drawing here. So we can turn it out again. I'm sorry I haven't got finished photographs of this, but there's the kind of thing that you end up with when you insist on being a maniac. You get a sort of funny stepped edge around the wall opening. It's one of those houses that the original guy, it was built for Francis Bacon. It hasn't got any plaster on the walls. Ugh. Anyway, it's stepped back inside the cupboard like that. And it's stepped back up the other side too. Of course, I haven't got a wide enough angle photograph to show you them both at once. Heavens no. The doors come off. The nicest thing in the job is that the lavatory system from one floor is up on the next floor, and the builder managed to get it in to the cupboard by just cutting a piece out of the frame, and you just see the black system just coming in very nicely there. And you put your hand through those holes up there, and you can feel various taps. You don't know what they're for, but you know they're there, and you can turn them. Very Danish. Very un-Danish. Very un-Danish, actually. Anne Louise wouldn't approve. She did approve. We got it up. We did it in time. She had a baby. It was all right. The day the builders moved out. Fantastic timing. Right. Next job I'm going to tell you about is a wonderful piece of un-Gough. I was longing to do a job where nobody could tell I'd done it. Like nobody, it didn't look like me. And the opportunity came when I was asked to design a PR room. PR room, wonderful. For a photo printers in called Conway's in Molyneux Street, and they had this bit of old shit heap left, which was 9 by 10 or something, and they said, "Oh, we want a PR room, we want it to look smart. We want to have people to lunch and sell them whatever they sell them, or persuade them to do all sorts of things they shouldn't do." And so I designed them a PR room. And the PR room is a very formal square. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite manage the square because they had a duct coming up one corner, they had a bit of wall stuck in another corner, and the managing director had to get into his office through where the other corner ought to be. And also, so I made some little round corners to sort of cut them off and put a telephone in the one that was left. So I'd get a ceiling pattern with a square with corners cut off, very geometrical. It's lovely, just building up geometries. And then decided the whole thing was going to be framed, so I'd express the framing. We better have the lights on because I'm losing everybody. On, off. It's lovely, isn't it? Ceiling, that's the ceiling plan, that's the floor plan, and the walls are just divided up into bits with doors sort of merging into panels and all kinds of things which I'd never done before, with like hidden doors and geometries, really, just getting it all sort of laid out, looking like some terrific building. Some building effort, and they said we must see a perspective, so did a little perspective, like about the first for about 20 years, and they took it on that, and we built it, and the lights weren't available. You have those architectural quarter tube lights, and I rang them up and said, "Are they available?" I said, "Yes, they're available." So I designed the whole scheme around it, then I rang them up and said, "I want some." They said, "Oh, no, they're off the catalogue." So I was stuck, and the great thing about partners is that they come up with really good ideas, which Rex said, "But what's the radius?" So I said 13 inches. He said, "A bicycle mudguard." So we used bicycle mudguards to make quarter lights around the things. Here's the bicycle mudguards, cut in half, made absolutely beautifully by a friend of one of our assistants, Jerry. He made them really absolutely fantastically. Those are half mudguards joined together in a stack of 3. The managing director, whose office was right next to the PR room, came in one day by a mistake and didn't like them. They now reside in our office. Partners are wonderful things. They have terrific ideas. Oh, it's a fool, it's a fool. Wish I'd thought of it. Anyway, also their builder couldn't get the red bits to bend round. But I proved him wrong, actually, because I just did exactly the same design again for somebody else. If anybody goes to have their site tested by Tony Gross, they may be in for quite a surprise, because I thought I could get rid of the lights on him, you see. He's like Groover. He might like the lights. So I designed exactly the same room for his site testing room. And actually, the builder there managed to get, interestingly, the builder managed to get the thing round. It's a slightly tighter radius. And 2, Tony wouldn't have the lights. So we still got them. Didn't work. What a strategy would apply. Oh, the telephone's wonderful, isn't it? Architecture. No, it's impossible. Right. There the lights up close. They're blue mells. People with a technical bent. Whenever I give a lecture, people always say, "Yeah, oh, yeah. But, how do you make your money? What do you do? This is what we do. Roger got us a terrific job. It's really great. That's why we're all still alive. This warehouse in Salem Road, Rex is showing it on his panel, and he's also got a few plans on his page in the catalogue. This is what is keeping us alive. We're converting a T-shaped warehouse near Queensway into what I have to call tastefully showrooms. Although you're not going to believe it, but I'm of course not allowed to say who the client is, clients being that way. We have a T-shaped warehouse which we had to convert into showrooms and loading bays on the ground floor, and because of the planning requirement, we had to give them 7 houses to let them us to have showrooms on the ground floor and offices to make money. So you have it and you convert it. So you just do what you do, and the quantity surveyor is absolutely stunned and amazed when we suggested to him that we'd put in party walls across where the structure was. He couldn't believe it. He said, "That's fantastic. That's a great idea. You put the party walls where the structure is. That's fantastic. That'll really save some money." So we were very taken with our own abilities and deductive powers to note that there were 7 bays and we had 7 houses to put in. The way the thing works is that to separate the upstairses, as it were, the offices and the houses, we've whacked out the roof of the warehouse and put a garden in. It's going to be a very formal garden. I don't really trust informal gardens one tiny bit. They tend to get very chewed up. I think the best thing is to have them as formal as you can make them. As organised as could be, and maybe just a pool of water, because, boy, in 20 years' time at least it will still be a pool of water, and not some forgotten informal garden. It has a loggia roof around it, and when you come to the building and come into the only new part of the building, which is a lift block, and a lift and some stairs, which are on the ground floor, you come up and you come straight into this garden and the loggia around it, and then you either go to the houses on your left or the offices on your right. The houses are long and thin and the offices are long and thin. They have all the tyrannies of terraced houses, I suppose. Here they are, they're marking their way across the top of this building at the front, across the bit you see when you go down Salem Road. This is the long elevation at the back, and shows, I suppose, all the... Like, you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, which is to make the offices cheap, you know, and the houses so they'll sell well, and the auction rooms... Oh, whoops! I said it! The showrooms. Whoops! It crept out, so it crept out. Bloody auction rooms. The auction rooms, you know, efficient. You know, you do all the... It's terrible. Your response is absolutely dead down to the nose. You don't sit down and say, look, people have got to work in these places. You know, they should be just as nice as a house. But the quantity surveyor's saying, 4 inch, go on, 4 inch on those skirting boards, and you're going, go on, 6. Go on, nice, 6. And they're saying, no, 4. And this is the kind of thing that we find ourselves arguing about these days. The only thing this has really taught me is that there's nothing, that architecture comes down to... No, it doesn't. I can't say that, because everybody will get at me. One of the things that you discover when you become boring, like me now, is that you're just after catalogues. Where's the catalogue? Where's a good knob? And all we find ourselves looking for is a knob. Right, we want a knob, we want a doorknob. We want an ordinary knob. Can we find an ordinary? No, there's no such thing anymore as an ordinary knob. Well, there is one. It's an aluminium kind of handle thing, but it's not... We don't think that's ordinary, but then maybe it is. It's this ordinariness. It's very hard to be really ordinary, and that's what we were trying to do with this job. We're trying to make it ordinary to make it cheap. This is the base of it. You do it ordinarily, but you do it as nicely ordinarily as you can. So you do it nice ordinary. It's a perfect ordinary. It's like the ordinariest ordinary. I don't know. You just use Sandtex and paint and tiles and bricks and all these things and wooden windows, because everybody, yeah, it's ordinary, you know. And then you just try and make it nice ordinary. Right, it's not finished yet. Lights off. It's not finished yet. This is the front of it. It's going to be pink. The top floor is set back slightly to make a balcony, and that floor is going to be painted as pink, a pink mixed with black to make it look as if it's recessed more than it really is, to make it look as if it's in shadow. This is a shot looking up at the lift block, and that's what all those are. Really, on the black and white is shots of this lift block coming up. This is the roof. Now, I would have just whacked on some bits of wood sticking out like 62s or something in my good old days of Lincolnshire. But once you get into a job of any size, you get a structural engineer, and he's very worried about it falling down. So he gets into a whole system of steels, like you can't believe, and guys put the steels up and then they put the wood on it. But you're trying to be as ordinary as possible, but one or two things aren't quite as ordinary as you quite meant them to be. And when you were designing the roof, if you'd known it had to go to steel, in a way you might have just pulled back. But because of the speed of the building, and because we were on site before we'd started drawing, we were like obliged to draw it, send it to the engineer, and then it was built. Anyway, we're trying, we're learning and all that. This is the roof. If you want cheap tiles, you go to Redland. I mean, I know it's politically all wrong, but you go to Redland, and the only way we could think of to get around that kind of insidious kind of all-over Redlandness was to mix them up, get 2 lots of tiles, and just tell the tiler just to mix them up. More at the top, more orange at the top, more red at the bottom. Actually, we did a very careful, to tell you the truth, very careful drawing showing exactly where each one was to go. We did! He didn't follow it! He didn't follow it. Of course he didn't fucking follow it. It must be mad. Anyway, we're having trouble with the roof lights. Not because the rain comes in, but because the roof light guy put in too low a quote and can't do it properly. Anyway, this is a site in Foreman. Mr. Day. Yes. Well, I don't know. I still seem to have something with builders in me. Anyway, that's the lift block. You can see the lift sticks out and has its own hat on it. You know, it's got its own hat, and there's the bit you come in, and it's got there's a roof up there to kind of stop you getting wet when you've come out under that arch. And when you come up into the garden, you see these, which are the backs of the houses. They are shaped down to make a patio. Each house has its patio, which is a lower patio behind the lower wall, and a little patio behind the top wall, which opens from the bedroom. Shall we look at the plan? No, we shan't look at the plans. You're not interested in plans. You know plans. You've seen the plans of terraced houses? Here they are. This is Mediterranean. The woodwork was specials. We had to put them in at the same price as Bolton and Paul. The quantity surveyor put in for Bolton and Paul, and we had to have them made for, well, almost the same price. All right, I agree. It cost a bit more, but there you are. He's fiddled it somehow. Each house has its own patio. This is where most of the sun comes from. It's sort of southwest. And the bedroom's upstairs, you see there, and the kitchen's downstairs, and there's a sneaky lavatory just inside on the left of the door, behind that little slit window. You see it there? Well, I don't know how much visual acuity you guys have got, but if you work out the width of that front door and where that wall is, you'll find that, yes, there is a little bit of a problem getting the handle down on the lavatory when you come to pull it. It's just about wide enough. Still, I like narrow lavatories. In fact, it's something of a competition between friends to build the narrowest lavatory. The roof, one quite nice thing is that the roof trusses are spaced very, very wide. Fantastic saving there somewhere. That's looking up into a roof light. That's the lavatory window, showing how you can't see into the lavatory from the... Oh, wait a minute. Well, you're not supposed to be able to see into the lavatory from the kitchen. That is halfway up the lift tower. I'm sorry these are not a very coherent set of slides, because all I've got sort of from rather casual shooting. There's Rex, and this is the way up round the lift block with very close woodwork. This is a mock-up for the patio roof, is the lower photograph. It's the first time I've ever done a mock-up, and I realise now that that's the way to get the builder to do the right thing, or for everybody to agree on it, is to do a little mock-up. It's lovely. It's wonderful. In the bill of quantities, there's money for mock-ups. It's fantastic. You can have a mock, they just put it in. It's fantastic. You can have a mock-up done. So we had a mock-up done. There it is. Doesn't look much like it's going to, but there it is. There's the lift block roof again in its two colours. Clever idea, that. That's how we make our money. What do we do with it? What do we do with it? They don't teach. Yes, they do. They're liars. Right. Right, they're all coming down. That's... I thought I might just as well own up and admit that we didn't actually pin our whole heart effort into that particularly kind of relaxed front that you saw on the photographs. We did attempt to persuade the client into a number of different ideas of ways to treat his building. This one was one where we suggested covering the whole thing in a metal lattice work, which broke down as it went round the corner and up the side. This one was my effort at doing a bit of Art Nouveau on the front. He told me he didn't like anything after Queen Anne, so that was rather ditched. It's Queen Anne. And this is a kind of, well, a sort of tougher version of that. He didn't like any of those. Ooh, it's very unsequential, isn't it? He didn't like any of those. End of conversation. Now, all architects have to build their own house. And one of the reasons for doing boring old jobs like this is to make enough money to do your own, you see. Now, being a conceptual artist, and so on and so on. This isn't my house, incidentally. This is the house next door to my house, which I also did. I have a friend called Neil, and I have another friend called Bob, and they bought 2 terraced houses, one next to the other. We sort of engineered it. And in the garden of one of them, there was a shed, and we said, we'll have the shed, you have the 2 terraced houses, I'll convert your houses, put on extensions, do all the things. So we did that. Right, I think I'm going to come back to the drawings just to show you the shape first, because it's better to show the drawings first than the pictures after. I know the drawings are rather dull, aren't they? I mean, when you've seen the pictures, what's the point of seeing the drawings? I think you ought to see the drawings, made to see the drawings. See the drawings! Right, 2 terraced houses here. Had to add on a bit. This guy wanted a big sitting room. He just wanted one. And the deal was done. He just took a slice off the back of this guy's house and gave him a bit of garden, which this guy hadn't got, since he's got our shed in his garden down here. Our shed's down here, I think. So he had a bit short on garden, so we gave him a bit of garden down here. If he could have get a bit bigger thing. So instead of getting the measly mangy little extension you normally get because of that window being there and the party wall being there, he was able to have a bit of a grand one. But the guy said, well, that's all right, but I don't want you to cut out too much sun, so we had it jacked round a bit. 60 degrees, get those hexagons going. Hexagon paving tiles. No hexagon paving tiles. Fireplace. And then we get through his house. We sneak through his house in a very cheap way, actually, of sneaking through his house here, to get to ours at the back. On top of this, I put a hexagonal bedroom. It's almost hexagonal. And with the pitch going into the pitch, the roof goes into the pitch there. And there's a bathroom and a lavatory, and then there's a bit more house over there. I don't know much about that. And then so then we got a house out of it. We got a deal, which was to get this shed, which we were going to make into a house. This is the shed we got. Here it is. And I like the rooms. Like space. I don't like space, actually. I like lots of little rooms. But we got this thing that was obviously one of those things that everybody wants, which is space. Just a space. So I thought it's really too rude to everybody to start dividing it up. I mean, it's like taking too many dreams away. So I decided I was going to really enjoy it as a space. It's a single space with a pitched roof into the middle of it on the first floor, and a plain space on the ground floor. And we've simply made an addition to put in the bathroom and to get in there and get between the floors on a staircase. This is the drawing I gave the bricklayers, and they'd already done this, so they didn't laugh so much this time. They laughed a lot at this one, but they didn't laugh quite so much this time. Anyway, I'll show you just a couple of really rough slides I've got of how my house is coming along. I know you want to know. So it's lights out. Last slides. There's the other house, there's my house. Look at that sensitive way in which they both angle at 60 degrees so that the space flows from one garden to the other. That's sort of coming on up there. I've managed to get a window on the corner. Seems to be the right thing to do with one of these sort of sheds. Did you see the style of the shed? Oh, I must just show you the style of the shed. Oh no, it must be here. Oh no, it isn't there. I'm going to come to it. The style of the shed is horizontal metal windows. Crittle devils, as they're known, and that's the style of the shed. There you are. It's all right. It's very nice. And I'm trying to do an extension there. I don't like extensions that don't look like the thing they're added onto. I like to play up what's there and get on with it. And so I've put on a kind of the office part to the factory. At the front here, I've got a corner and put the door out the middle. Look, that's the only sort of door I could get. I promise I'm going to do something else, something jolly. It's my brother who's building it. That's why. No, there's the real builder. There's the builder. Now, this is how I get on with builders, you see? He was at the AA, for heaven's sake. He should know how to build things. This is my house, anyway, that I'm building. I'm putting in French windows on the first floor so that I can fall out to the garden. Well, that's all I've got to show you. That's all I've built, and I built some more. Oh, no Piers Gough's talk will be complete without showing you something I haven't built. I don't think it's fair. You should be bored into things that you haven't built. You won't probably be able to see it. Here it is. Something I haven't built. A shop for Fabergé. They told me they wanted to... It was like a dream job. They said they just wanted to spend about £1 million on a shop or something. And they wanted it to be so frightening that nobody would dare go in who wasn't very, very smart. So... Well, you know what Fabergé make, Brut, you know, and all those other very smart perfumes. I don't know, anyway, they're upgrading their image. I invented this very expensive shop, which was, well, actually, no, I'll tell you the real truth. Why don't I tell the truth? This is really what I wanted to build, which was a blown curtain to make a canopy with 2 layers of aluminium. Like an aircraft wing, they'd be separated, and the structure would be the fact that there were 2 layers of it. And that would just sit out like that, and then we'd have a glass wall, but it would be like glass hung like a tablecloth and slightly folded at the front. I thought that should cost a bit. She said, look, the lady said, well, the quantity surveyor priced it, for Christ's sake. You want to know? £25 a square foot. That's the front. Or is it? Yeah, I think it was £25 a square foot. Was it £125 a square foot? Anyway, it's a lot of money. He priced it. He just looked at it and priced it. It was really spectacular. Anyway, he said, look, put in something a bit more serious. You know, maybe we'll get it through, and then you can build what you want. So I did this, which is like a material hanging down, but made of perforated steel. I had Conoscenti will know I've designed this scheme before. Actually, it's just called getting another attempt at getting it up. I still haven't got it up. Of perforated sheet steel, so that you can vaguely see through it until it gets into 3 layers where you can't see through it. And you better not, because there's some boring old facade behind that. Then there's a glass wall, and then the floor is like one of those computer floors, but it's on legs, so the legs can go different lengths. So each time you go in the shop, you trip over, because it's not like it was the last time you went in. It's all different level, you know, the levels are changed. It seemed like I was trying to do a sort of smooth version of a kind of landscape dream. This is also quilted steel, or was it going to be aluminium anodized? I can't remember, whatever was the more expensive anyway. And this, sorry, this joke isn't very funny. And this was going to open, in fact, each of those parts were going to open into a kind of velvet-lined thing to display a bottle of Brut. After I'd done the drawing, I found out that Cary Grant actually owns Fabergé in America, and that he was going to be sent the drawing. I did a whole coloured number of this. And I was really disappointed, because I could have, you know, done something that would have perhaps endeared it to him, like had Audrey Hepburn, you know, in there somewhere. Something nice. I'm sure I could have pulled it off if I'd known. But I didn't know, and I didn't pull it off. So you won't see that down Dover Street, or wherever it's South Audley Street, or anywhere. Right, that's it. Thank you.
In an event which, by my own making, I suppose, is as arrogant as the present event, I've noticed with interest that it has really, as one of my critics said, been a series of one-man shows, rather like the old art gallery one-man shows, a series of layings down on the line, the tradition of suggesting answers, or at least the feeling that there is an expectancy in the room for answers rather than open ends. And this word that has been used and used again, and I look at it in a slightly other interpretation, the tradition of rhetoric. And so I can only humbly explain the territories from which my position and designs can be viewed. I can discuss the values which I hold. I can discuss the dynamic of one's position and of design itself. I can offer, since one has been teaching for many years, that these things suggest a pedagogy, or are examples used in a pedagogical situation. That the held values change, but that you must always ask yourself what they might be at any one precise time. That the dynamic of them, which for me is very essential, can exist on 3 levels. It can be the dynamic of a value system, the dynamic of a work example, or the necessary dynamic which these pieces of architectural idea suggest to the pedagogical situation, to the teaching situation, or, if you like, as examples of something. But the necessary thing is to keep moving. And this awful word, pedagogy, means that you are very conscious of looking over your shoulder. And I think many of the people, even the youngest amongst us here this afternoon, already have fallen into that terrible habit of looking over their shoulder, that you are very conscious of not designing just in thin air, but that other designers and commentators are sort of watching your every move. And that quite genuinely, I think, that one is conscious of a two-way traffic with ex-students, students, cronies, friends, other 40 London architects, etc. And that this is, in my mind, indistinguishable from the business of making magazines, of making rallies, of making drawings, of making late-night conversations, of making scribbles, and sometimes of making verbal diarrhea, I suppose. That this whole business is not only looking over your own shoulder, but looking over other shoulders. And that the business of teaching is by analogy rather than copying. And so that things that may at best be influenced by each other don't have to look like each other. Very boring, dry introduction. What I'd really like to talk about is what we've been sort of building up to this afternoon. I was very excited to see at last some sort of real bullshit coming out towards the end of the afternoon. And I'd like to quote you a quote from Bruno Taut in a circular letter of 1920. He said, "Long live Utopia, and long live that Utopia which, to the greatest dismay of the jeerers, dares to step right into the hornet's nest. We, the worst disturbers of their peace, carry our torches high. Even the jolly good fellow citizen likes to gaze into the blue. However, if we shine it into the familiar dark places where skulking goes on," I suppose they mean ARTNET or its equivalent in the 1920s, "then our torch becomes a frightful flame. Moths fly into it and burn their wings. Vermin take to hiding, and the worthy citizen, blinded by the light, shrieks, 'Revolution!'" Oh. I can now see what all these problems have been. You know, it's easy to sort of jeer from the heavy balcony there, but when it's actually happening to you, it's something else. Do we shriek? I got very pissed off at about 3:30 this afternoon when the sort of moaning willies, as I've had my piece on that. Do we even creep up on things? I think a lot of what we've heard, even today, has been sort of one-dimensional. I mean, I'm deliberately being critical of my fellow cronies, and probably myself, that we kind of present it and lay the story very heavily in one direction. Whereas, to me, and this makes one's position totally different from that of say, the Smithsons, as I said the other afternoon, that I cannot find myself but wanting to see several sides of every issue. But I will, for the purposes just of leading in, look at 4 old projects, which I will try to analyze and see whether there is any sort of structure of thinking, whether it was worth looking over one's own shoulder. And I'll look at them from these 3 points of view of the value that one held, the dynamic that they may or may not have contained, and the pedagogical implications, which, though it may be confused with the younger Geddes, I will call the pedi value this evening. The first scheme is a golden oldie, I suppose. Oh. It's a bugger, this thing, isn't it, actually? Ah, I see. What's happened to the right-hand projector? Peter? Nothing's happening on that one. No.
Try and plug it in.
one without the plug here. Sorry about this. Yeah. Oh, it seems to go right back to square one. Can you put them both back to one, Peter? Actually, then I think I'll get back to it. It's a blank on this side. Yeah, thanks, mate. That was meant to go with that bit of rhetoric. This is a golden oldie called ad hocs. What was one thinking about? What was the so-called value that was being held at the time when one was playing about with one's suburban origins? I think a quote I could use is Hans Hollein's term, alles ist Architektur, or one could say that architecture is change. And I suppose this is what people think of when they use the word archigram. I think that dynamic is a very simplistic one, the straight sort of between the eyes metamorphosis thing, a word which I'm told now is not used anymore by David. And the use of the vernacular, and what I like about the vernacular is always with us. I personally regard carousel projectors as now part of the vernacular. They don't happen to have knotty pine, but you know, the vernacular crawls along with us. And that one is in fact using one's systems, one's in-group conversations grafted onto the vernacular, just, I suppose, as Piers Gough was doing. The other old, beginning to be golden oldie is the lump. Those of you who don't know about the lump, I'm only showing 3 slides of it, but I started off looking at the idea of lump by trying to avoid architecture. I said, let's take a thing that's just a thing, it's just a lump, it doesn't have any idiosyncrasies, it doesn't have any hierarchies, it doesn't have any niceties of form, it's just stuff, it's a lump. And one's value, I suppose, was then playing about with this thing where architecture is to use a pedantic term, neo-indigenous. It's nearly like things as we find them ordinarily. What was its dynamic? Its dynamic, I suppose, in the final analysis is when you walked round the lump, you found that it was architecture all the time. So that this return to nature wasn't really a return to nature. It was to do with surprise. It was to do with realizing that one couldn't sustain a project which didn't begin to involve architecture at all. And it also, I suppose, is to do with something that has fascinated me all the time, which is the business of attacking one kind of architecture, one kind of situation, one kind of substance by another, or one rule system by another. And as I say, the thing which I found interesting to talk to my own cronies and students about was the fact that out of the dissolve came a building. And I suppose this is a very traditional sort of pruning tradition. The prepared landscape, a place with a matrix of a building hidden within it, and the whole conversation that one had at the time about architecture, again, pedantic term as neo-indigenous, that the matrix within the center, by being placed in that rural place, starts having strangeness of itself, so that the mechanical part tends to take on the natural growth. It decays into it, and the natural landscape itself is affected by the mechanical part. And one is fascinated, rather like I suppose, a extension of the preoccupation with Corten steel. One is fascinated by the notion of decay, rusting, that the old farm cart seen behind the hedge begins to be a lovable object, whereas the new farm cart ploughing in front of the hedge isn't. The dynamic then is a business of infiltration, eating away, rusting, and making the natural artificial and the artificial natural. And I suppose the petty value, if you like, is the business of looking at the countryside as architecture, and then looking at architecture as countryside. The urban mark, which was to do with this business of setting up a mark and then letting it metamorphose until in the final analysis there was a very unstructured place there, is in the final analysis to do with optimism. when we take the last slide in the sequence, one poses the question, is it the end of the civilization that created it in the first slide, or is it in fact a hint of the architecture of a very much more sophisticated civilization? For me, there is only one answer. There can only be one answer, which is the optimistic one, that it is the latter. But this business of metamorphosis isn't just a straight linear progression. I think this is, for me, the thing that developed out of early days of plug-in cities and so on, where the metamorphosis is of like kind. I mean, it's just a exchange business. That paradox begins to be involved. That a thing metamorphoses not to either an image of itself or a development of itself, but something which may be a contradiction of itself, and carrying along with it a whole series of implicit internal contradictions. And that, for me, still makes the business of proposing architectural projects which do change and metamorphose infinitely more value-ridden than simply you do it, then it's done kinds of projects. The petty value, I suppose, is to do with reflections back and forth on the question of the naturalness of change, and the business of inevitability, and of course the business is to what extent you can predict differences of change. It's this business, again, as I said at the beginning, of being fascinated by the like and the unlike and the curious effects that they have upon each other. And the business that most of our critical measures of architecture also tend to be extremely one-dimensional, so that we are able to evaluate one set of forces in terms of others which have the same measure. But when they don't have the same measure, we're completely thrown. The business, I'm now going to just go through very, I hope fairly systematically, certain preoccupations which I have had for a while. One, as I've mentioned several times, this business of metamorphosis. It can be simplistic metamorphosis. It can be simply the thing deforming, or it can be, as I've said, this metamorphosis that involves a lot of other factors of measure and value. The business of the conjunction of the like and the unlike. Sometimes one does this, again, in a very simplistic way, so that the prepared landscape contains little bitsy bits of buildings where the natural vegetation suddenly hits a very artificial piece of the use of land, and a very contrived piece of building hits artificial land and then hits rather natural looking land. Or it can be stated like in the sponge drawing of the patchwork, where you deliberately place the unlike, but you place them within a matrix which holds them into an architectural system. Or you can set up this old joke drawing from the Foulness scheme of the conjunction of the like and the unlike, so that it is a social situation, you know, the rich guy with the caravan, the architectural student with the coloured triangles, the hillbilly guy, the conceptual artist living out of his sleeping bag, et al. And you propose this beatific situation where they might all coexist with each other. Pretty stupid as a social proposition, perhaps, but intriguing to do once. And then when formalizing the conjunction of the like and the unlike gets out of control, because I suppose for people like me, one's sort of art worry starts to take over, and you have a certain kind of unlike with a certain kind of unlike, and then you're down the slippery slope again. And I dragged this up from the 10 years ago Folkestone conference. P. Banham, sitting up there, will remember our collage made of his face saying, prefabricated capsules don't prevent consumer choice. And you used Granny's wallpaper on the capsule just to rather heavily, rather one-dimensionally label the point. The business of naturalness has fascinated me in a kind of cynical way, I suppose. What I find, though, is in the English traditional sense, I'm becoming less and less cynical, and the danger signs of romanticism and the English picturesque and all that are already beginning to beckon me. But the business of comparing and trying to deal with real natural or hidden in nature, which is different, the business of concealment within the natural, which is a different game from just organizing the natural. And then finally, the neo-natural, which isn't really natural at all, but which is a kind of spoof nature, which personally I still find the most intriguing one. And so the corollary is the business of the artificial. And I think this is a sort of almost a one-man tirade against the English tradition of wanting to be a good chap, wanting to use natural materials, going back to the vernacular, wet methods, and all of that, which is to deliberately enjoy things of complete, total artificiality, that they could never be dug out of the ground as they appear. They could, and the sleek drawing, I think, was the one, still doesn't look sleek enough, but where one is wanting it to be oozingly, nastily, fiendishly, disgustingly cosmetic, if you like. And that the artificial atmosphere, I use again a golden oldie, the Living City exhibition, I think looks better in spooky blue than it actually looked in sort of pop art multicolour, because to me, if you could get buildings to be like dreams, I mean, I don't think that's an unworthy thing to try to attempt, and sometimes you only get it with the distortion of a funny old photograph where it begins to have that spookiness of a dream or a gas bomb attack or something like that. Something pretty nasty. Comfort was something which very few architects, I don't think even Piers Gough this evening mentioned the word comfort, although he was in many ways very comforting. And one's interpretation of the business or the attempt to make things comfortable, of course, is as old as the tradition of placemaking itself. And in a way, it doesn't really matter whether it was our 1967 archigram version of comfort making, people being looked after by buzzy objects, or these characters who are obviously in their own way very comfortable. I think that one's attempts with some fairly recent sort of furniture things, a thing called the magic carpet, where one has a system of carpets with nasties like vibro-massage carpets or bits of the carpet that you can sort of nestle with, bits of carpet you can sleep on. And there's a particularly good one for architects on the left there is the seat part of the carpet where somebody can hold forth and the rest of the people are sort of slowly going to sleep. But it is extremely difficult to get anywhere near the general, let's call it a popular view of comfort, which is represented by this slide. This, I think, to most, not just lay people, but probably most people in this room, is much closer than the last three slides to the wish to actually be comfortable, and why not? Lest this chat become too comfy, another shriek from the past, from Sant'Elia, about futurist architecture, which I still like, even though it's unfashionable. Futurist architecture is the architecture of calculation, of temerarious boldness and simplicity, the architecture of reinforced concrete, iron, glass, cardboard, textile fibers, and all those replacements for wood, stone, and brick that make for the attainment of maximum elasticity and lightness. No stock answers. The fundamental character will be expendability and transience, les mots en liberté, plastic dynamism, music without bars, and the art of noise. And I'm not so sure, maybe I'm being historicist about it, but there's something about that. You can, whether or not it's wood and brick and whether there's the art of noise, but there's something about the sort of fiendishness of that bit of the Futurist Manifesto that still gets the old nerve endings going, and why I was sort of slowly getting a bit ratty in the early part of the afternoon, but got considerably more cheerful as things got increasingly idiosyncratic and out of hand. The question then of how seriously we, these pedagogues and these pontificators, should take architecture, it has been necessary from time to time to look at architecture as a toy, not just the sort of jokey toy, perhaps to make a toy of your own architecture, so that some years ago we made a plug-in city do-it-yourself cardboard cutout, which I think Ben Banham is one of the few who's actually attempted to do. We then ceremoniously burnt the model here in ARTNET. Or even the Roosevelt Island scheme that the group of us did a year ago, is in some way a toy, a deliberate, nasty, big, vicious 20-mile scale toy to be seen across from Manhattan onto Roosevelt Island. Or perhaps Ron's toy for kids, a building built as a toy. And just going back to Sunday when some of us went out to Starhead, the business of contrivance and playing with architecture as a toy or a monument, and you get to a point where you know it's both or neither, which is quite nice. Or toy making. There is, again, one comes back to this English tradition of toys as parts of romantic projects and delight in finding toy buildings, such as, this being practically everybody's favorite thing at Jaywick Sands, because it's it's a toy. And there's the business of toy as coy, which worries me very much, and crept, I fear, in Bob's thing last night, and certainly sticks very much in the throat with some of the material that the Venturis use. The fact that they're slightly acrid people and American means that you lose that English coyness, but if you look at it objectively, it's still a worry. The thing that I think is not often understood about the things that I do is that structure is very often a most essential trigger for what one does. Whether it is the structure, and in this old project of the orchard, one made an analogy between orchard and megastructure, between real orchard and perhaps minimalist orchard. But things like trying to find a way in which architecture could have the flexibility and control at the same time of something like choreography. I've been fascinated that somehow, if only architects could discover a language of design and structuring, which is not only analogous to, but perhaps even very close to choreographic description, where time, atmosphere, movement, position, scale, etc., all being involved together, we might be onto something. I haven't had the guts or the time or the nerve to do it, but it's still there as a thought. And so therefore the kinds of structures that one does propose, even when one's doing them in projects that are sort of hairy and open-ended as the Sponge project, still have that very architectural look about them, even though they are talking not only about placement, but about disintegration and about a whole lot of other things which should be closer to this, but still remain looking like plans. And so in the intersection house, which I'm going to come on to in a minute, one is, of course, triggered by structure, and all the time one is quoting and re-quoting back aspects of play of formal and informal structure. And even that funny thing which is serving as a bar decoration upstairs, which is actually the Sponge building elevation, before one did it, there was in fact an approach trying to specify what one would do rather than visualize it in the early stages. So that this diagram is a specification of the kinds of sponge condition that one would have, but it is attempting to keep it from being visual at that stage. I don't think it succeeds, but it was trying. And structure is a trigger as well as a rationalizer. Architecture, I think, and I've rather suggested the overuse of this word wit for this conference, but it was something which was conspicuously lacking not very long ago in this particular city. I think it's coming back, thank God. But wit is the difference between these two housing projects, in my view. The one on the left, pious, do-gooding, simplistic, paternalist, the old oak tree at Welwyn Garden City, the little cottages with their, quasi-folk windows, whereas Schindler at La Jolla is playing an infinitely more devious game, and in fact, as I've often told part of this audience before, the effect of time, the effect of 40 or 50 years of real growth and real funny old spooky people is making it even more ambiguous. And the building not only contains more wit, but permits more wit. The business of style, something that has not even been mentioned this week, even though things are much more relaxed. is the business of style. And I don't just mean style, but the style of the level at which an architectural pronouncement is made. So this thing is not only beautiful, but if you remember the whole context of the wedding hall at Darmstadt, it is an incredible sort of punchy thing to suddenly happen in that rather boring wall. And style is also, of course, a question of personal style. Your taste may well be this as style, but as I suggested before, even the vegetable buildings could be regarded as vegetable building style as opposed to patent glazing style, prefabricated style, etc. And taste and rules then come into the thing. Is the building on the left distasteful, but is the building on the right more tasteful because the story backing it up is a story of the child in the secret garden and it's all nice and lovely? This business of breaking rules fascinates me. We always think of Bruno Taut as the sort of shrieking suggester of the Alpine architecture, or the maker of that incredible glass pavilion in Cologne. But then he suddenly gets into cottagey business, you know, and our whole historical system is challenged. What the hell do we do with that? Is it part of that, or is it part of the other thing? The shape's the same as the glass pavilion, but the rhetoric is part of some funny old German I mean, Conrad's probably got an explanation for this. Or we look at the work of Korb and we're, as students, rammed down the throat. And this is the terrible thing about the middle and late 70s being too much like the 50s for me, which is that here we are back again being told what is the correct Korb and the Korb that we must study and pilgrimage to and make models of and put on people's wedding cakes and all sorts of things. Whereas for me, there is Korb doing a Cedric, you know, 35 years before. That's much more interesting. And so I come to 3 projects of recent months. The business of sponge as a kind of mind chair. I started off this project, here's the bar decoration upstairs in its earlier state, as the outcome of a series of bits and pieces where one was trying to design the parts first and then put them together in a building, a thing one had never done before. Some of the parts come from earlier predilections, like the orifices there. Some of them come from things, requotes, like the secret garden, requoted. And some are talking about a lovely conversation called gunge, which is, for those of you who are not from England, is a piece of English colloquialism that is to do with sort of old bits of tat and bunging things in and patching things up. And the whole English tradition of messing about with and then post-rationalizing it, which gunge and mending old cars and patching up boats and architects living in old buildings and sort of left doing things with them. It's all part of it. But of course, one's own art worry or predilections took over, and it starts getting nice gunge, and the gunge starts taking on other values, and at that point you move on. And the sponge project ended up by having a lot of strange inconsistencies, and I suppose it needed something a little bit more structured, like the House for the Intersection, to pull all this back again. Now, this, in fact, what I'm saying about this, and I think I said it the other afternoon, and was glad to hear Richard Meyer say that he hoped that people who did this intersection house would use their own preoccupations and not just do something which they thought Richard Meyer would like. Because that's what we did. I made this house design with a rather shy lady who's sitting up there with blue glasses called Christine Hawley. And I think we both of us pulled out several worked over things, but helped along by this intersection. I think it's nothing much of a house. There's no bathroom in it, there's no bedrooms, there's nothing. There's not even a person wandering about on the drawing, because Christine always says that I make people look rather terrible on drawings and it spoils the drawing. So it is about analysis of form. I suppose it's about symbolism, but it's also, I think, about all the things I've been talking about. The plan is very simple. As with, 438 of the 550 submitted projects, I suspect, it has a cross form here. And we invented a piece of the Via Appia. We scoured the photos of the Via Appia, and we couldn't find one that quite did what we wanted it to, but this is a bit from one bit of the Via Appia, and that's sort of like what you get along the Via Appia, like an ancient arch relic and an ancient column relic, which suggests this line, the column leading to a kind of almost ritualistic altar place, if you like, and the arch giving on to this rising path. This is a descending path. This is a rising path leading into the grotto. And a thing called a modern road, which is a sort of, amongst various cronies of mine, the word modern is a sort of joke word that we use. We say, oh, it's modern, it's all right. It's a sort of joke word. And the modern road cuts the line from the column relic and is picked up by a piece of white curved concrete architecture on two columns, which reminds you of modern. Of course, there are remembrances of the urban mark thing, which was also generated by a cross. I think the urban mark was weaker in the sense that once you'd started filling it up and then defilling it, it had done its job, whereas this is very much more of a sort of neutral zone. Things don't happen very much on these paths. They happen always aside, seen from the path or seen through the path. They tend to stop at the path, and the path is like slicing a cake and then pouring the gooseberry jam into the slice, let's take a food analogy. Things seen mistily. I think we're both of us very fascinated by things not totally explicit. An object certainly remembered, pretty well remembered, almost remembered, and then, well, maybe not. And the scheme is full of trying to suggest layerings. As I said the other afternoon, it's very much concerned with layerings. One part of it is a facade which is facing the Via Appia, in line with the Via Appia. But it is to do with picking into facadism, so that, for instance, from this rising part, one always sees the flanks of these fins that we call the rack smoothly. They're always seen smoothly from this side, but from the modern architecture, suddenly turning in on them, they're always seen very crumbly, so that this rack itself has two completely different kind of personae. And there are memories seen from the Via Appia. It is if you like, a heroic... Somebody wanted to see facades this afternoon. Well, this is what this is. This is a facade with architecture from, the Gothic, the Greek, the Renaissance, and the modular, even creeping into the act. And this whole business of seeing memories of things, this is, I think, a student project of Christine's, which is to do with memories. This is a garden with memories and things seen but not quite seen through. And in the Roosevelt Island scheme that we did, there's another game going on, which is the placing of the natural, this thing that the natural, the near natural, the artificial natural, but the placing of natural in amongst the hard part of the architecture, always something which one is fascinated to play back and forth. You kind of simultaneously have a love-hate relationship with both the nature part and the architecture part. Another oldie is one's desperate wish one day to build this building that has total transparency, translucency, increasing density till it's sort of solid, without windows, without doors. So this bit is quite simply a requote of that. This is to do with the orchard taken up on end and dissolving, so that this is using growies, first of all to make chambers, and then just to make a kind of almost classical architecture of themselves sticking up into the air. And as one works back into the thing, one then comes to the spookiest part of all, which is at the back here, the grotto. which in some ways is very reflective of the work done on the ground plan of the Roosevelt scheme, and the business where the surface and the formal architecture dissolve and then re-emerge, so that the rising path ends up as a funny kind of rhetorical platform where you gaze out at the real country after you've passed through, but not in amongst, the grotto. Here you can see the arbour, the side of the rack and so on. This is a piece of modern architecture that you see at the end of the modern road, bisected by the line from the column. That looks a bit puny. No, funnily enough. No, why. And a requote of another of Chris's early student drawings. I think you can see this whole business, and you probably see from both panels the business of dissolving and resolving. But actually, of course, the plan of this thing is quite, in itself, quite classical, so that just when you think it's the whole thing has melted down, you look carefully and you actually see that there's, again, a formal, structured kind of system going on underneath it. Which leads me to the last thing up the wall, on the wall, which is called Arcadia A, and I hope is the first of a series of Arcadias, or what do I call them? Garden suburbs. I haven't got time this evening to go into this whole thing of again, English romanticness, tweeness, niceness, nice chapness. They're all nice people looking at nice flowers in a nice building, and the light is trickling delicately through. Or back to just, hope it won't bore you, but just some happy snaps of our visit to Stour Head on Sunday, which is fortuitous for this scheme. You can see the old intersection house living again as an apartment block. Wicked thing to do. I don't know quite what the plan of the apartments is, but it's used as a device. I'm beginning to be fascinated by, again, an English thing of taking romantic turning roads, but I've used it as, in fact, the centre of what I suppose turns out to be, in fact, a neoclassic organisation, an organisation with a central neoclassic situation, but at the centre of it, it's actually the most romantic, or most obviously romantic element. Then this thing, which some people say is like Hazel's Head, is actually derived from willow trees, and I designed it, or I started playing around with it in Rhode Island School of Design, when already 2 weeks out of England, you know, one was beginning to have beatific views of the Thames and all of that. And then when I got the slides yesterday, I found that there's this thing which, if you hold the slides up to the light, looks like a sort of stone object, but in fact is a waterfall at Stour Head. And it sort of summarizes the whole thing, the highly rhetorical object, but on close inspection is in movement, is actually in dissolve, is constantly flowing. But on the photograph, placed in this absolutely classical situation, and the way it's actually quite a long way away from the camera, you know, something like a quarter of a mile or something, framed by this spooky semi-translucent thing where you're not quite sure where one surface begins and the other ends, and that comes right back to admittedly the paucity of this attempt, but at least that's what it was about, I think. Because to me, I haven't got time to go into it in great detail, but the business of Arcadia is about dreaming that you try to make real, and I suppose that's a reasonable summary. This is a stream in Bournemouth with, again, this business of transparency, which one is trying to suggest here an orchard that disintegrates into sort of just floppy bits of growing. The feel from the inside of this house, one would hope, would be something analogous to this, but you'll have to wait to the next drawing before we know quite what it's going to look like. And the original inspiration was this willow tree at the Thames. And then Bernard, in his lecture, fortunately he was unloading his lecture this morning when I was loading mine, and we did a quick swap. Some bastard has done it about 200 years ago. Much better. Which, you know, now then you divide into two kinds of people. Those who sort of get terribly upset that some bastard has done it 200 years ago, and they go home, they crawl away, and they don't do anything for the next sort of 3 years. Or you say, great, fantastic, super bloke, you know, I'd like to meet him. Let's keep moving. And I think, again, one is fascinated by formality threatened. What I like about this slide is that, yes, at first sight, it is a neat piece of axial gardening planning the rational path, but it's being threatened. And that's what we like to do with our architecture, is to threaten the thing and turn it progressively into something else, back to perhaps toys, perhaps to placement. These people, I think, are some of the people sitting in this room, but it doesn't really matter. And the whole feeling of melting, so that one is taking this idea of melting architecture now, I hope, to a sort of a more structured phase. But watch out for neoclassic elements, because one never knows, they might happen. Another thing that one finds, one's pulled in this, the hedge contains studio houses, and I must admit that I was reading that little book about Bedford Park the sort of week before I did the drawing. And perhaps that, so there's a funny requote there. That is, in summary, the explanation of this drawing. It's a bit tatty because the rally was coming upon us, but that, you know, one shouldn't apologize. It's anticipating, I hope, the next architecture. Thank you.